Well, welcome everybody. As Kurt said, tonight we're going to talk about which DNA test should you order. The first thing that I want to say is just a quick disclaimer that this information could be superseded by some new development that happens next week. So the DNA landscape changes quite frequently. So I wrote this program here in early December of 2021, and as of today, it's as correct as I can make it. But like I said, a company could change their website tomorrow. They could offer a new test tomorrow. I don't think that's going to happen, but things change. So always look at the websites for these companies and look for updated information. And the other thing in this disclaimer is just to say that some of this information that I give you tonight is going to be my opinion or my advice, and you can take that or you can leave that. And if you ask somebody else, they might give you different opinion and different advice. So, alrighty. So this is the time of year when people are giving gifts to others and sometimes to themselves. So if you are planning or might be thinking of gifting DNA kits, this is a really good time of the year to do it. All of the companies have sales at this time of year. They have Black Friday sales, they have Cyber Monday sales, they have sales going on the whole month of December for the most part. So you can take advantage of this to get some of the best prices during the year right now. So if you're thinking about buying a test for yourself or for others, this might be a good time to do it. What test you should purchase would really depend on your own goals. So you might want to think through what it is that you're trying to find out, what it is that you hope to learn. And hopefully this program tonight will spark some ideas with you about really kind of clarifying what your goals are. And that will help you and that will inform which test really you decide to purchase. And I'm generalizing in this talk tonight. So every one of us has our own specific situation and our own little, weird bugaboos that make our situation slightly different from somebody else. So it's not really one size fits all. So I am generalizing tonight, but your situation might be a little different, might be a little quirky. Be sure to send us an email if you have, further questions. Okay, so some of the reasons that people do take these tests are, and this is an incomplete list. So sometimes people want to learn about their ethnic background. Sometimes they want to learn about their health or like health indicators that are in their DNA. Some people just want to learn more about their family history in general. They don't really have a specific goal in mind. Some people are, genealogists and, dedicated genealogists, and they want to use DNA to get back further on the tree. Some people want to find birth family or to solve a mystery that they think might be solvable by DNA. And then there are lots of people who just kind of are looking for a Christmas gift or a holiday gift to give to people. And they think, well, I'll just give that person a DNA test. It'll be fun, And then, of course, there are other reasons that I haven't mentioned here. You may have your own personal reason for doing it. So we're going to go through that list one by one and kind of talk through them a little bit. So the first reason would be to learn your ethnicity. And there's a lot of interest in that. I can think of commercials that have been on TV where, they're advertising for a certain DNA test and they show regular folks like you and me who are on this commercial saying, well, gosh, I just really wanted to know where my family came from and what ethnicity we are. And I didn't know that much, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I took the test, and now I just feel complete. So there are a lot of people who are in that category. I like to look at comics. There's just the fact that there have been a lot of comics that have been written about DNA testing tells you how kind of ubiquitous this is in our culture right now. So this person here, of course, possibly has sent in their test to the wrong the wrong DNA company because they got back results of different species of dogs instead of different ethnicities of humans. But that's a cute one. And there's a lot of others if you kind of search on the internet for comics about DNA testing. All right. So in all seriousness, to find out about your ethnic background, you want to take an autosomal DNA test. And that's going to give you two things. It's going to give you the ethnicity estimate, and it's going to give you DNA matches to genetic cousins who have also taken the same test. Now, there's 4 reputable major companies that offer the autosomal test. And then there's a couple more minor companies that are still reputable, but minor. So the 4 major are ANCESTRYDNA, Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage DNA, and 23andMe. Now, I'm going to just go through real quick and show you. They basically are presenting your results in a very similar fashion. So this is what your ethnicity estimate would look like from AncestryDNA. And you can see there's a map of the world. It's color coded to the ethnicities over there on the right. And so the map is color coded with those ethnicities. And if you wanted to learn more about one of those ethnicity groups, such as Scotland, you would just click on it. Now, each of the DNA companies will have a lot of information on their website. So and they have FAQs and they have customer service lines. So if you have a real burning question about how to interpret your ethnicity results, I would say look over their website. The answer might be there in a question and answer format or in the help files, or call them and ask them. But anyways, if you wanted to know more about one of these ethnicities, you can click on them. So if we click on Scotland, we're going to get this, where it zooms in on the map to Scotland, and it gives us more information over there on the right about Scotland and about kind of the ethnicities that lived there in the past, because that's really kind of what this test is looking at, is what people groups were in the area that is present day Scotland in the past, and how those people groups kind of settled around. Some of them didn't stay in present day Scotland. Some of them moved on to maybe Ireland, etc. Okay, so that was Ancestry. Then you can see Family Tree DNA, very similar. You've got your map of the world, you've got some color coding going on, and you have the different ethnicities over on the left. And again, if you wanted to learn more about Central Europe, you could click on that part of the list and get into a further screen that tells you about Central Europe and the kind of peoples that were living there. And Family Tree DNA also will paint your ethnicities onto the chromosomes. So your autosomal DNA is looking at your 22 chromosomes plus the X chromosome. And so this is still from Family Tree DNA, and it's color coding. You can see on the left-hand side, Western Europe is that dark blue, and then Southern Europe is a slightly lighter blue, and then then the Baltic is that turquoise. And so this is color coding it onto the chromosomes and showing which chromosome had which ethnicity. This is kind of an advanced topic, and so I wouldn't expect a beginner to get that excited about this or to even care about this. But if this does interest you and excite you, I wanted to let you know that it was there at Family Tree DNA. This is a relatively new development. They haven't always had this, but they do now. Okay, so MyHeritage, going back to the next company, MyHeritage. Again, we've got the map of the world. We've got some color coding going on there. And we have the list of ethnicities over to the side. And again, if you wanted to know more about Irish, Scottish, and Welsh, for example, you'd click on that and it would open up in this new screen. And so we'll move on to 23andMe, which is, you guessed it, the same. There's a map of the world, there's color coding, and so forth. Now, 23andMe has one aspect that the other companies do not have, and that is this aspect right here. So if both of your parents have tested at 23andMe and you have tested at 23andMe, you will get this graphic. And this graphic is showing from the perspective of a person who's tested and then their mother and their father. So we've got Sarah here, we've got mother here, father here, and this is showing me that, showing us how much British, how much French and German, how much Eastern European I got from each parent. It's not really showing up in the graphic very well, but it shows on the 23andMe website. So I can see, because 23andMe has also looked at, evaluated and analyzed my parents' DNA, this is showing my exact breakdown that I got from each one of them as far as ethnicity wise. And 23andMe also color codes the chromosomes like family tree DNA. And they've been doing it a lot longer. So, and you can see over here that they're using all these different same colors of turquoise, which I can't really differentiate because I have some color blindness. But if you don't have that, it's great. But anyways, so again, that's more of an advanced feature, but if you are interested in that, it is there at 23andMe. All right, so then we take all of those and we put them together on one page, and you can kind of compare and contrast that I have tested at all 4 places, all 4 testing companies, and they should be similar. I'm basically 100% European. I don't think that I am really anything else. 23andMe has me as a very tiny percent African, and that could very well be, that would indicate an ancestor, you know, many, many generations ago. But for the most part, 100% European, mostly Northern European, some Eastern European, but there's differences. You can see if you're comparing and contrasting these, there are differences. So what do we make of that? Well, basically, not to, you know, belabor the point at all, but each company is a different company. So they're going to calculate these results a little differently. They're going to present the results differently. So, you know, some companies were splitting out British into England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, and others were smushing those groups all together in one group. So there's a lot of that going on where they just present the results a little differently, have their own little categories that they're using, and each company has their own customer database. So part of the DNA analysis for your ethnicity report is involving comparing your DNA to other people in the database. And so you're comparing to the people in whichever database you have tested with. And all of the companies are going to provide you with an estimate. So I have the word estimate in capital letters there. That is because it's an estimate, and it's not, they're basically basing it on the best science that they have available today. And they keep refining these. And so if you tested 3 years ago and you haven't logged back in and looked at your ethnicity estimate, whatever company it is that you tested at, it has changed. It has changed in 3 years. And that's because they're refining it, they're making it better all the time. And so it's not a static, you know, answer, a precise answer right now. It's more of an evolving estimate that keeps getting better and better, but it still has perhaps a ways to go. There's going to be variations, there's going to be margins of error to be expected. So I would say just enjoy the differences and look at it as a conversation starter at your next family gathering, rather than something that you are really pinning all of your hopes on, that this is going to tell you exactly what ethnicity you are. It's not really set up that way right now. I hope it gets that way. I hope it gets there in the future, but it's not there right now. So my bottom line advice, and this is my opinion, is that if your main goal is to get an ethnicity estimate, then you want to order the autosomal test, and you can order from any of the 4 companies. You've just seen that they all do a relatively good job. Having said that, experts, many experts will say that they believe that 23andMe does the best job of the four right now in December of 2021. And Ancestry is probably considered the second best as far as the ethnicity estimate goes. And like I said, those are people's opinions who work with DNA regularly, and you can take that or leave that. Okay, let us move on to testing for health information. So a lot of us are thinking more and more about our health history, about inherited diseases or conditions, and can these DNA testing companies help us with that? Well, of the big four that we already talked about, the autosomal testing companies are really the ones that I'm prepared to talk about tonight. 23andMe is the only one that was founded as a health or medical testing company. It's kind of like secondary that they provide you with some genealogy information because they really wanted to reach people with their health testing. And so they're going to offer different health information for an additional fee. They call it the Health and Ancestry test, and it's regularly $199. There's sales going on and so forth, but that's the usual price. And then recently they've added another option, which is a 23andMe membership, which is $29 per year, which offers some additional information. Now their website, if you go to the 23andMe website, they will have a checklist here for you. And so you can go through and see which one of the three options, the basic DNA test, which is called the Ancestry and Traits, and then all the way up to the 23andMe Plus membership. So you want to kind of go through that and see which one is the best one for you. This is an example of one of the reports. So if you signed up for the health aspect of 23andMe testing, the advanced health testing, this is one of the reports that you would get that tells you about your genetic health risk for certain conditions. It's not every condition either. So you want to be sure you're reading the fine print and you know whether the condition that you're particularly interested in is actually included in this information that you're going to get from the test. Now, two of the other companies will do something called traits. So AncestryDNA does traits. It's called Ancestry Plus Traits, and it's going to be a $20 extra fee on top of just the regular autosomal test. And Ancestry says basically, this is from their website, go deeper into your DNA to learn about your personal traits, compare with others, and discover if your traits are shared with people with specific ethnicities. And so this is what their website says. These are the traits that they are going to provide you with a little report on. So it's just kind of an interesting little tidbit of things about different, whether you have this trait or whether you are possibly might have this trait. Family Tree DNA does something very similar. Theirs is called My DNA Wellness, and it again is $20 extra, more than the regular autosomal test. And what they have is twofold. They have DNA Insights, which are available forever, and then they have a My DNA subscription, which is available for 30 days only. And the My DNA subscription is menu and workout plans that would be tailored towards someone with your particular DNA traits, I believe. So the insights that you would always have access to are going to look like this. And again, it looks very similar, I think, to what Ancestry is giving you for their traits. And then you have the 30-day free membership to DNA-powered plans, meal plans, and workout plans. And so you just got to remember that you've got 30 days to get those off of there, or you would have to subscribe, and you certainly don't have to subscribe. Now, If you didn't want to do any of that, another way to get a lot of health information for a very small amount of money is to take the autosomal test at any of the 4 companies that we just talked about and upload your raw DNA file to Prometheus or to a site called CodeGen. And Prometheus is $12 right now, and CodeGen is free. And you will receive a detailed health report. Now, here's what Prometheus's website looks like. And they say that they're going to build you a personal DNA report based on connecting a file of DNA genotypes to the scientific findings cited in SNPedia. Now, this is an example of one of the tests. So this is telling you whether you have a particular variant for this particular gene, which is dealing with prostate cancer. Now, I find this to be a very scientific website, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But a fellow that I know who has teenage children told me that his teenagers uploaded their DNA to Prometheus, and they learned so much and they loved it. And I said, did they understand it? And he said, oh, sure. And I was like, man, I feel really silly now. But anyways, so you may or may not find this site to be over your head. You might have to get a teenager to help you read it, quite frankly. That's what I thought. I was going to hire this other guy's kids to come and help me. The other site is CodeGen. And again, you're going to upload your raw data to this website, and they tell you that they will spit out an individual 3,000 page report with all sorts of information about your genes. So this is what CodeGen's website looks like. Now, both of these reports that you would get from either one of these sites, you can download, I believe, and show them to your doctor. And so that might be, one way of using this information. Now, of course, there are other DNA companies that don't do genealogy at all that would do medical testing, and you could certainly look at those too. And I can't speak about, what those would do or not do. Now, there's a couple other aspects. There are people that are wanting to prove paternity for court. And so these autosomal DNA tests, I don't believe are admissible for that right now. They might be in certain states, but by and large, I don't think they are. And so you'd want to get your DNA, your paternity testing done from a reputable lab that specializes in paternity testing. Now, there is something that's new on the horizon here that's recently become available. A lot of people want to prove that they are siblings to someone, either full or half siblings. And in the past, there were different labs and testing companies that said that they were providing you with a sibling test, but when it turns out they were only examining a few different places on the human genome, like they were testing like 12 markers on the whole human genome, and then they were trying to determine whether someone is a sibling based on that. And it really wasn't enough. So there's a new test that is available from Parabon Nanolab, and it's called Affinity Test. And this is a test that will reliably prove if someone is your sibling or half sibling. And you can also use it for court cases, I believe. You just have to make sure you ask for the legal version of the test. So that's something to look into if you were looking into that. And of course, if you have serious medical conditions in your family, you want to talk to your family doctor because there are other options. Like I have breast cancer in my family, and I was sent to a geneticist by my doctor who, evaluated me for breast cancer, genes. So that type of thing, you want to be sure that you're doing that. Okay, so the bottom line advice again is that 23andMe is really the only company that's going to offer you health testing per se of the 4 that we talked about, but you can always upload your raw data to Prometheus or CodeGen. Okay, let's move on to testing for family history information. So this is for, anyone who is really, just kind of not really sure what they're going to get from the DNA testing. You can certainly just take the autosomal DNA test and see what comes up. So remember, the autosomal DNA test is the one we've been talking about. And alongside the ethnicity estimate that you're going to get a list of genetic cousin matches. And so this is the way the cousin matches are presented at AncestryDNA. And the other companies are very similar to this. You're just going to get a list of people that you match with, and it's going to be arranged from the closest matches to you genetically first. So in this case, you can see that at the top of my match list is a parent-child relationship. And this is actually my mother. So it will identify for you who your parent is. Then the close family is my aunt and uncle. But you can see it doesn't really tell us who they are. It just says they're close family to first cousin, and you have to kind of figure out who they are. And then I do have a first cousin match down there who is actually a great aunt. So these are my highest level matches, and these are all people that I asked to take the test for me. If we continue down my match list, you can see I've got some second cousins, some third cousins, and so forth. Now, I've covered over their names so you can't see who they are, and some of them have pictures, and I've covered over those as well. But one of the things you can do just starting out, if you're just starting out to look at your DNA match list, is you can see which known family members have tested. If you find people that you don't know, or maybe you met them once in your a family reunion or something like that, and now you see that their name is on your match list, you can contact them. Some people don't want to contact people, other people do. So you do what makes you comfortable. You certainly don't have to do anything. You can just kind of check out the match list and then go on with your life. But you can exchange family information, photos, documents, and you can even, strike up friendships with people, meet with them. We've had numerous people come here to the library and tell us that they're meeting with a new DNA cousin today. So they'll meet here at the library for the first time with somebody that they met through their DNA match list, basically. And they get together and work on family history projects together. So, and of course, you can also start building your tree and learn more about your ancestors using your DNA cousin connections as a starting point. These are all things that you can do that are pretty simple and straightforward with your autosomal testing results. So I would say that Ancestry DNA, Family Tree DNA, and MyHeritage are all good options for you if you're really wanting to, get a lot of cousin matches and kind of work together with your cousins. 23andMe, being that it's a health company first and foremost, it's not really geared towards genealogists per se. They don't have a lot of options on their website for genealogists. They don't make it easy for us to network with people on there. So you might, if you're only going to get one test, you might pass on the 23andMe test if you're really intending to use it for genealogy, because some of the other tests would be better than that. And there's going to be exceptions to that advice. So don't just go telling people that Sarah told you not to get a 23andMe test, because sometimes you will need to get a 23andMe test, but and it might be the best solution for you. But I'm just saying, genealogically speaking, it's not as great as some of the other sites. Now, the serious, dedicated genealogist, what kind of tests should they get? So basically, autosomal testing is really, again, a great test to start with and work on. So if you're the family genealogist, you're gonna recognize what I have on the screen here is a family tree. And this is a family tree that starts with me over on the left, and it goes to my second great grandparents on the right. And with the autosomal DNA test, you're going to have matches that basically descend from all of those second great grandparents. Now, unless your family are recent immigrants to the US. So I personally do have DNA matches on my genetic cousin list to every couple that's listed here on my second great grandparents, except for the ones that have the foreign sounding names. Johann Caesar, Helena Poklukar, Alex Pushavitz, and Maria Leggett, I do not have DNA matches to them because they are people that live in Eastern Europe. And they only had a few of their descendants that came to the US. And so I do not have DNA matches to all of those families. So, and that may be the case for you also if you have a lot of recent immigrants on your tree. So, but the other families listed there have been in this country for generations, and I have DNA matches, like I said, to descendants of all those couples. And so this is a way, again, to kind of match up and interact with some distant cousins of mine that are related through my second great grandparents. And it also helps to confirm that those are my second great grandparents because I'm matching to other descendants of theirs. So that's one of the things that you can do as a family genealogist with your autosomal results. Verify your known family lines, find unknown family lines. Sometimes you can find the maiden name of a female relative using DNA. Confirm or deny family stories. And again, finding the DNA cousins. Going back to about 5 or 8 generations, you're going to start inheriting much, much less DNA from each generation that you go back. And so eventually this autosomal DNA is not going to be detectable from, like, say, your 8th great grandparents or even the 7th. It may be too far back, but it's really good for the more recent generations that you're researching on your tree. So the serious genealogist, I would say, if you're serious about your genealogy and you have the funding to do so, I would get your DNA into all 4 of the autosomal testing companies because you can find relevant matches at each of the testing companies. And, you know, who knows whether, you know, over at MyHeritage, you might find that one person who unlocks a whole side of your family that you hadn't known very much about. Now, 2 of the companies, MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA, will allow you to upload your raw DNA file into their databases. So you don't have to purchase a test from those 2 companies. You can upload your test from Ancestry, your data file from Ancestry or 23andMe, or one of the other companies into MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA. That saves you money. And the serious genealogist ought to consider very seriously getting the Y chromosome test if they're male, and the mitochondrial DNA test as well. And we'll talk about those later. Okay, solving a family mystery by DNA testing. So a lot of people have mysteries. Autosomal DNA is really the way to go with that. It will help you with adoptions. It will help you with if you have an unknown father, unknown grandparent, and some other mysteries going back further on the tree. It gets less and less likely that you're going to solve the mystery the farther back you go. Probably 4th or 5th great grandparents might be the outside limits, depending. The Y chromosome and mitochondrial may help in a specific situation. And again, with a family mystery, you are going to have to probably get your DNA into all 4 of the autosomal databases. Now, in order to kind of try to save money, my advice, and this is just my opinion, is that you want to start with the largest testing database, whichever one that is. Right now, the largest DNA testing company is Ancestry. They have the largest database, and so logically speaking, you have a good chance of finding the answer to your mystery just by testing at Ancestry. But if that does not solve your mystery, then you have to keep going. So then you could upload your raw data to Family Tree DNA and MyHeritage. And then if that still doesn't solve your mystery, then you could purchase a new test for 23andMe. There's also GEDmatch.com. So real quickly, GEDmatch is a free site where you can upload your autosomal DNA file and compare results with persons who have used another testing company. With GEDmatch, you need to be aware that the police, the law enforcement, are using GEDmatch to solve crimes, violent crimes. Mostly, I believe, murders and some violent sexual crimes. So you want to read the privacy and law enforcement policies carefully before you upload there. And that will come up as you're getting ready to start the upload. So you want to read that. And if it sounds, like something you don't want to be involved with, then back out, and you don't have to join GEDmatch. And you can also, after you have uploaded into GEDmatch, you can opt out of the law enforcement matching. But you have to go into your kit and physically mark it to say, I don't want law enforcement to be able to look at my kit. And some people think that that still is not enough. They think that they're worried that law enforcement may find a way around that. So there's some people that refuse to upload to GEDmatch anymore, but definitely give it consideration, because law enforcement is solving a lot of crimes this way, and crimes where the families needed resolution. So anyway, so as far as your mystery goes, so let's say you were adopted, you could get a DNA match to a close family member. In this case, you can see that, let's pretend I'm adopted. These are my matches again. And so I'm testing at Ancestry, and I get all these great matches. I get a parent-child match, and it looks like my birth mother has tested. That would be a really, thrilling thing to have happen if you were adopted. But that is not the case for everybody. Certainly some people will get really good matches like this, whereas other people will get distant matches only, second and third cousins. Now, it is absolutely possible to solve a family mystery like an adoption with only second and third cousins, but it is more difficult. So you may have to do more. I would say if you're going to be trying to solve a family mystery, I would read up on DNA basics in Blaine Bettinger's book, Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy. If you were specifically, if you're adopted or looking for an unknown father, you want to join some adoption Facebook groups such as Search Squad and DNA Detectives. Those will help you. People there will give you free advice. They're private groups. No one else can see them except for the people that are members of the groups. You could also seek out help from an expert, and males may have to consider a Y chromosome testing if they can't solve the mystery with their autosomal. So the bottom line advice is most of your recent mysteries can be solved by autosomal DNA, and you want to start with the Ancestry.com test, which right now is the largest database of users, and continuing on down that list that I gave you. You might have to do more DNA testing. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you might need to have an expert helping you, because sometimes solving mysteries by DNA is hard. Okay, there are three specialty testing companies I'm going to mention real briefly. And these are kind of the smaller companies that I was talking about earlier. There's Living DNA. So this is headquartered in Great Britain. They will do an ethnicity estimate that is broken down into counties or cities, even in Great Britain. And so they had plans, I don't know if they're still working on this, to do the same with Germany and some other places in Europe, but I don't know how far they've gotten with that. They have a few cousin matches at this time, but it's mostly an ethnicity breakdown. And if you have a recent British Isles or Irish ancestor, this might be a place for you to test as well. This is kind of what their ethnicity estimate looks like. So it looks very similar to the ones we've seen, but you can see that it's breaking down Great Britain and Ireland into Southeast England, East Anglia, Cumbria, Cornwall, etc. So different regions and counties in England. National Geographic used to have a DNA project that was called National Geographic Genographic Project. They are no longer supporting this, so it's no longer going. The project is stopped. I believe you can still access your test results, but do not quote me on that. what the company did originally was they offered you an ethnicity estimate, and they offered you male and female haplogroups. And I believe if you can still access your results, you could upload your raw DNA data to Family Tree DNA testing and get it out of National Geographic into one of the companies that's still around. Here's what the GENOGRAPHIC project results looked like when they did that. And the final specialty company is WeGene, and it's basically, you can upload from other companies into it. It's based in China. It is for those of an Asian background, and it's going to get you a better ethnicity estimate for the Asian countries. And a lot of Asian adoptees who maybe, don't have a lot of very good information about who their birth family might have been, will use WeGene to kind of get a better idea and a better sense. So again, it's going to have your map of Asia and tell you what different ethnicities you have in your DNA. All right. So now we're moving on to the other types of DNA testing. So there's Y chromosome testing, and that is going to be testing on the direct paternal line of a male. So the Y chromosome DNA test, only males have a Y chromosome. It is passed from their father to sons. It's only available from Family Tree DNA, and it traces the direct paternal line of the male tester. It can help you find DNA cousins, men who are descended from a common paternal ancestor from about 50 to 500 years ago. Men who are looking for an unknown father or paternal grandfather. The general advice is to test your autosomal DNA first. And if your father cannot be found that way, then you could try to take a Y chromosome test. And you may or may not get lucky with the Y chromosome. Other uses for the Y chromosome test include learning about the origin of your surname, learning about your paternal tribe, usually thousands of years ago, get past a brick wall on a male's direct paternal side of the family. Sometimes you can find your immigrant ancestor this way and satisfy your curiosity about your male line origins. So the paternal tribe information is called the haplogroup. And this is just telling you kind of where the group that your particular paternal line is part of, where they were living thousands of years ago. So you can see here, it's talking about 23,000 years ago, this group was over here and did this and that and the other. And then you will get a map of the migration. So all of the haplogroups right now, they believe came out of Africa. And so this is tracing how the haplogroup I came out of Africa and moved up into, looks like Iraq and Syria and Turkey, and then went into Europe. You also get Y chromosome matches. These are links to other men who have taken the Y chromosome match and who match you. Now, this is a best case scenario here where the person who tested was named Allen and his DNA matches also are Allen's. You can see over on the right here, paternal earliest known ancestor, they're all listing Allen's. So what is that exactly telling you? That is telling you that all of those Allens probably came from a common Allen paternal ancestor 300, 400, maybe even 500 years ago. It may be possible to figure that out, and you want to work together with those matches, email them to try to figure out connections. You may have to do a lot of genealogical research on all of those men and their Allen ancestors, and you may be able to construct a family tree which shows how all of your matches may relate to the same common ancestor. So it's really fascinating work. The bottom line on the Y chromosome is that those with an unknown father should take an autosomal test first. This is kind of controversial. Depending on your price points and your budget, I would say get the highest level test that you can afford to get. It's really good to get 111 or a big Y. But if you cannot do that, and they are costly, they're on sale right now, but if you cannot do that, they're costly, you could start out with a 37 marker test, and it can be upgraded later on. But if the person you're testing is elderly, realize that, you know, you might not get a second chance to test that person. And so buying the highest level testing that you can afford right now might be the best thing. So they kind of have to weigh the pros and cons there. And serious genealogists, I suggest that all male genealogists should take this test. If they never plan on using it or doing anything with the information, I think it's just good to have it done. You will get some information out of it. You will learn more about your paternal line origins, and that can only be to the good. Okay. The third type of DNA test is the mitochondrial DNA test, and this is your ancient maternal line. So the mitochondrial test traces the direct maternal line of a male or a female test taker. It's only passed on by females to their children. So you will have inherited this from your mother, who would have inherited from her mother, and so forth. It's only offered by family tree DNA. You're going to get the same type of results that you got from the Y chromosome. You're going to get an ancient maternal tribe, and you're going to get genetic cousin matches. So here's your ancient maternal tribe information. Again, it's a haplogroup. So there's Y chromosome haplogroups, and there are mitochondrial haplogroups, which are two different things. This person who's tested here has a haplogroup of J. And you can see again that we have, oh, I didn't do that right. Okay, so I showed you that this person was a J, and then this person here, whose migration map I'm showing you, was an H. So two different people. I got that mixed up. Sorry about that. But anyways, haplogroup H, which this person was from, it's again showing you how that haplogroup came out of Africa and up into, looks like Syria, Turkey, and into Europe. Your mitochondrial DNA matches looks surprisingly similar. Now to the Y chromosome ones. Over here is the earliest known maternal ancestor. But the problem with this is that these matches don't have to be within a genealogical time frame. They can be from 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago that you had a maternal ancestor in common with this person. So it's not that great for your recent genealogy. So I would say look at your matches, see if you can find a connection, but if you don't, you know, move on with your life and realize that it may not be possible. There are cases where mitochondrial DNA testing might be the way to go, but you'd want to get the advice of an expert, and you almost always want to take an autosomal test first. A lot of mysteries can be cleared up, and a lot of recent information about your maternal side can be found in the autosomal test. And again, I think serious genealogists ought to consider getting the mitochondrial DNA test just for your general family knowledge. It provides you with that haplogroup information about where the family where the female line of your family originated from. And I think that's really interesting. And you might regret not getting it in the future. So, okay. So those are our testing types and the different reasons why you might want to take a test. Here's some fast facts about the companies. And again, this is really information that can change. So this is as of December 2021. We've got AncestryDNA with about 20 million people who have tested. They have a good ethnicity estimate. It's easy to build your family tree on their site. There is a membership fee for some advanced DNA features. It's the best site for adoptees and those with family mysteries to start with because of the size of their database. And you can get a wellness report for an additional $20. Family Tree DNA, about 1.4 million persons tested with their autosomal test. They're the oldest and very well-respected company. They have a large pool of Jewish and European users. Many serious genealogists use the site. It's the place where you have to go to order the Y chromosome and the mitochondrial test. And it does offer that wellness traits report for an additional fee. MyHeritage, about 5 million people have tested with them. They're the newest company of the 4 that we're talking about. They have more current European residents as members. So if you remember when I was showing you my tree earlier, I have an Eastern European side of my tree, and most of those people are still, most of my relatives are still over in Eastern Europe on that branch of my family. And I have received DNA matches from people who live in Eastern Europe from MyHeritage. So people in Eastern Europe are purchasing the MyHeritage DNA test and taking it. So it's a way to kind of get more matches that are back in the old country, maybe. And you can also build your family tree on MyHeritage. 23andMe has over 12 million people tested. Their ethnicity estimate is particularly well regarded. They are a health testing company, first and foremost. So they don't have as many genealogical tools on their site. And for $99 extra, you can order health reports from them. So ordering the test, we'll just kind of go through this real quick. This is kind of a recap of what we just talked about, which test you want to do. When you order the test, you'll get a kit like this in the mail, basically, and it will look something like this. There'll be clear instructions. So you'll want to sign up with a testing company and pay your fee. You'll submit your sample. You'll either spit in a test tube or you'll swab your cheek. And your results are going to be all online. You're going to get an email telling you your results are ready. You will then view them online on the company's website. Way back in the olden days, when I first started doing DNA testing, I believe some of the companies would mail you in snail mail with some information, but that is no longer the case. Depending on the test, you might get results with the name and contact information of your matches, the degree of relationship between the 2 of you, and an explanation of your results. Now, everyone should be prepared for unexpected results. And when you find those, be discreet about it. If you find out that cousin Sue gave up a child for adoption, you don't run around and tell cousin Marilyn and cousin Bob. You approach Sue and say, Sue, something has happened with my DNA results and I need to tell you about this. So just be aware that this could happen. I've had a lot of people come into the library here that have been unsettled by their DNA results for some reason or another. Some kind of family secret has been revealed and they were not prepared for it or ready for it. Each company has a privacy statement which you should read. And you should think about law enforcement access if you are concerned about that. Family Tree DNA and GEDmatch both allow law enforcement to access their database. And basically that means that law enforcement can submit DNA from criminals, violent criminals, into the database and get matching and see if your DNA matches with that criminal DNA. You can opt out of that, both at Family Tree DNA and GEDmatch, but you have to log in and change a setting. Now, Ancestry, 23andMe, and MyHeritage do not allow law enforcement to do that. And I believe that they vigorously defend against it. Like they say you have to have a subpoena in order to have access to their sites, and they don't cooperate unless they're forced to. Now, there's a couple of things on your handout. These are books that are just kind of generally about population movement and genetics. The first one, Saxons, Vikings, and Celts, is about, of course, the genetic roots of Britain and Ireland by Brian Sykes. And then DNA USA is kind of the same about the US. And so it's going to be general kind of information about the type of DNA that's found in the people that were living in Britain and Ireland and in America. And then, like I said, this is the best book. It's really there's two or three beginner books, but this is what I would consider the best book for you just getting started. If you wanted to read a book on DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy, and it's by Blaine Bettinger. You can get this readily available. You could order this for people for holiday presents as well. It's readily available on Amazon and different online, and probably in Barnes and Nobles and brick and mortar bookstores as well. So with that, I think we are done with the presentation, and we might be ready to do question and answer.